Hi everybody, welcome to episode 15 of Satellite 664. I'm one of your two co-hosts, Kaz Tag Yan, and as always I'm joined by...
15 or 14?
15.
Is it really? Where did the other 14 go?
They went on to YouTube.
Evening, everybody.
Evening. Morning. Finally, I get to record.
It's morning for both of us.
Finally, I get to
record. It's currently 1:45 a.m.
And it's 10:30 for me in the morning. Finally, I get to record during daylight hours, and finally, I can be awake for an episode. We had a incredible response to our last episode with Blaze Bailey, that was a terrific, really enjoyable episode. We were buzzing after it, weren't we, Loopy?
Even watching it back, I've watched it back 2 or 3 times now, and I still sit there laughing. You know, when you've heard all the jokes before, but you still sit there and laugh. It's like watching somebody live on stage, and then you go home and watch the video, and it's that kind of, I don't quite remember that bit, but yeah, great episode.
A few people commented that I looked a bit tired on that episode, but that it was 2 a.m. Here in Melbourne when we were recording, and ironically enough, we were asking about the song 2 a.m. So I looked a bit tired, but I'm sprightly now, and I'm awake, which is good. So we've got a special guest. We've got another special guest, a gentleman that we've wanted to get on the show for pretty much since the show started. So,
yeah.
But
it's a man with a lot of information.
Yes, and a lot of information. Due to logistical reasons, we haven't been able to get him on, but we're chatting to him today, and we've got the one and only Keith Wilfort on the show, and oh boy, this was a really good conversation. We were planning for half an hour, and we ended up talking for an hour. And Keith is a unique individual because he was there from 1976 to 1996. I mean, he was there for 20 years. He's seen it all, experienced it all.
Most of my 7 years look just pathetic.
Well, you're 7 years.
The silly thing, I mean, me and Keith were both there right at the very start, as far as I'm concerned. It was the start with the piano era. And I learned something from today's conversation.
Yeah. Look, because guys like Keith are a treasure trove of knowledge and information about the band. Because again, they were there. They were an integral part of how the organisation, and they could see the inner sanctum. So they really have an insight that 99% of people wouldn't have. So, and this was a fascinating conversation. We both learnt a lot. We think everybody will enjoy it immensely, and stay to the end. Watch it to the end, because it is a great conversation about
it is a good chat.
The history of the fan club, the history of the band, the evolution of the fan club. Love it. So let's
be prepared to learn something,
as we do.
Yeah, as always.
Everybody, we have the pleasure of being joined by Mr. Keith Wilfort himself. Keith, welcome to Satellite 664. Real awesome to have you here. We've been wanting to have you on for a while, and here you are.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. Yeah, good afternoon from sunny and very hot California at the moment.
Yeah, good afternoon, Keith.
It's like 80-something degrees out here at the moment, so we're all sitting here with the air conditioner on.
It's one of the. I think it's the second time on this show we've actually got 3 different countries sort of represented on the show. So
international.
We're almost becoming. Yeah, that's right. Almost like United Nations.
That's our aim.
That's our aim. If only we had Rasmus on live, it'd be four countries. So, well, Keith.
If you get Harry on from the Caribbean.
Yeah, well, one would hope.
Fingers crossed on that one.
Yeah, probably out playing tennis with Cliff Richard or somebody.
Oh, does Cliff live in the Caribbean as well, does he?
Yeah, he's got a place there. Well, funny enough, he's got a place there and a place in Portugal.
Oh
Oh,
right, okay, that makes life
Yeah,
easy. Just take your racket wherever you go.
that's it. Our racket will travel.
Yeah.
now Keith, so we've wanted to have you on for a very long time. You are sort of history will say you're one of the really important figures in the certainly the early days of Iron Maiden.
Good old history.
Sorry,
Good old
good old
history.
history, and that
Yeah.
you
Legend. He's more of a legend than I am.
the legend, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I legend in my own lunchtime.
Well, sort of growing up in the 80s as a teenager, every time the fan club magazine used to come in, I always used to see, your name. And then in 87, when I saw the 12 Wasted Years video, I actually finally got to sort of see you and hear you speak.
Right,
And
yeah.
now you're on the show. So Keith, it, I'm just going to get you to introduce yourself and let us know about your sort of history and entry into the world of Iron Maiden back in
Okay.
'76, I think it was.
Yes, yes, it was. Well, basically, at the time, I was working for British Telecom, and there was John Duffus, who you've mentioned several times, and a couple other friends at British Telecom. We was all into rock music, and we used to go out on Friday and Saturday nights and go to the pubs, watch bands and stuff. Basically, how I discovered Iron Maiden was purely by accident. Um, when we was at British Telecom, they used to have a tea trolley. You used to bring around tea and snacks every morning, every afternoon. And one of the tea girls was called Jill, and she was a cute little blonde. And basically, you can imagine, like everyone, every man, every single, every single male in the place, like wanted some of it. And well, we sort of became friends. And one day she had a part time job as a barmaid, and she was leaving it. So the pub was putting on a celebration for her. So we all thought, oh great, this is going to be our last chance. So we all pulled down to the pub. Yep, great. Jill was down there and stuff. And then all of a sudden, this big hulking guy walked in. And it turned out it was her boyfriend. So we thought, oh dear, that's going to put a damper on things. So we thought, oh well, so we said our goodbyes and buggered off driving around the East End. And we were passing by Stratford at Maryland Point, and we heard this noise coming out of the pub. Basically, it turned out to be Transylvania. So I thought, oh, these sound a bit good. We'll go and check them out. So we pulled up, went into the pub, and basically caught the second half of Maiden's set. We thought, yeah, these ain't a bad band actually. Like they played a lot of original stuff with a couple of covers, and we thought, oh, we'll check these out again. Incidentally, being the first night, it was sort of like a fight broke out right at the end. Uh, Two guys started rucking down front, and like Steve and Dennis sort of pulled them apart and everything. So I thought, oh, this is bad. This isn't bad. We'll come back next week. So we went back the following week and then started to watch them on a regular basis. And of course, they got to recognise us. We got to recognise them. We'd buy them drinks and stuff, and occasionally, like, we'd give Davey a lift home or Steve a lift and stuff like that. So over the course of the next year, we sort of went to all the gigs, got to know each other and everything. And at the time, it's like probably about the beginning of '77. I sort of said, like, you've got this following and stuff, and like people keep asking about it. Why don't you put out a newsletter, do your own
Mm.
T-shirts? And of course they sort of said, oh yeah, like go away. But then I kept on about it, and I produced a couple of homemade T-shirts. And the first one was sort of like basically it was an adaptation of a slogan they were using in their ads, and had Iron Maiden in black print. It had "See 'em rock in silver," and then no, sorry, "Hear them rock in silver," and then "See them bleed" in red, because Dennis doing the bit with the sword, and also as well they had like a sort of adaptation of the Rolling Stones logo on their business cards. And then a few months later, I did the Charlotte Rules OK one. And then finally, a few months after that, I did the Invasion one, which was a picture of two Vikings racking it out.
So Keith, your I suppose those two homemade shirts, the Charlotte Rules OK and the Invasion shirt, are
Yeah.
they highly likely to be the very first Iron Maiden shirts in existence.
Oh yes, undoubtedly.
And
I remember when I turned up at the gigs with them, and the band were like, "You serious? You got to be crazy," sort of thing. Yeah, and they were knocked out by them.
and
I know it's a stupid question, Keith, but have you still got them?
yeah, that's what's going to be
No,
my next question.
unfortunately, they were like literally worn to death.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And what from your recollections, what was the very first Iron Maiden T-shirt that was, so to speak, sort of officially?
It was the red. It was the red one with a black logo, similar to what Lucy's pointing to on the wall.
Yeah, I downloaded that literally 5 minutes before we went on air.
Yeah. I think it was. I think it was sort of like a joint Steve Harris and Dave Light's effort.
Yeah.
I wonder why they chose black on red.
That was the first commercial one.
I wonder why they chose black on red.
Well, I think basically it was the no, I think basically the red was sort of associated. I think it was sort of loosely
With the
associated with
blood.
like the blood and guts.
Yeah.
And I mean the Maiden logo in black, it just sort of like was like a counterpoint.
I've got to admit, I mean, their logo going back to the Book of Souls tour, their logo in black looked stunning.
Yeah. I mean, it's still to me, it's probably still the definitive Iron Maiden T-shirt.
Yeah, well, it was the first. It has been original, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it's been reprinted loads of times for the fan club and everything.
Yeah, that's a fairly recent one because it's actually got Iron Maiden on the label.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they've reprinted those and sort of marketed those out for a while now. I mean,
That's right. Yeah, I mean, basically the band, they were done by the band and Rod and everything, but we sort of did them ourselves before, like before they got a merchandise deal with Bravado and whoever, and then it became fully commercialised. Although Maiden supplied the designs, Bravado did all the work and took all the financial risks.
So Keith, now could you talk to us about the actual steps which occurred, or the process of you actually becoming the director of the fan club or the head of the fan club? So how's the fan club sort of
club secretary?
Sorry?
I was never allowed to be director or manager. I was the secretary. Because in those days, these fan clubs had secretaries.
Yeah. So
who actually ran it then? Was it Rod?
Well, basically, I mean, I did, I answered the fan mail and stuff, but the sort of creative push and financial support was from Rod, yeah. So, we put our heads together, and he'd come, because I was sort of like the link to the fans, so he'd sort of say, well, what do you reckon would work with the fan club? Because initially the idea, well, right up to almost when I left, the fan club was strictly meant to be non-profit. And is like, with the magazines and everything we did, it had to stay within a set budget. And the budget was the budget was production costs could not exceed revenue from fan club memberships.
Okay, so all right, so you probably don't have the right to say yay or nay, but do you reckon that's still the way it's run with Laz in charge now?
Yeah, basically. I mean, obviously they can do a lot. They do a lot more with the trips and stuff and special events, which is, I mean, part of which I wanted to do, but at the time it was like, no, that's out the budget and stuff.
Yeah, limited. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
So Keith, at which point, sort of, what is point zero from when the fan club started? Was it in early 1980 or was it before that, when it actually became an organised?
It was actually like sort of September, October 1979.
Yeah.
They were talking about doing the Soundhouse Tapes, and Rod wanted to put out a newsletter just to sort of like, this is what we're doing this month or whatever. And so initially it was just meant to be an information service, because obviously this was before the internet and everything, and the press weren't giving much coverage of what the band were up to. So it was an idea for the fans, a way for the fans to stay in touch with the band and what they were doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's how times have changed. I mean, back in those days, we really did rely on, those fan club magazines, which were quite small, to come
Yeah, well, that's
through.
it. I mean, Rod's philosophy and Steve's was like, people want information. They can come to us. We'll give them the information, not sort of like, fake news or rumor or whatever. Straight from the
Well,
horse's mouth.
well, yeah, you only had, primarily it was the fan club magazine, and I recall you always used to write the first page and say, well, the band are in the Bahamas at the moment at Compass Point. They're
Yeah,
working on these songs, and we'll have more in the next one. And so it was like a progress thing. And really, other than the magazines, your circus magazines and your hit paraders and Kerrang, there really wasn't any other way to get news. And I guess a lot of our
no,
younger listeners wouldn't really be able
But
to
no,
they wouldn't have
grasp
got it
that.
to they wouldn't have got it to the extent that Keith was putting it out. I mean, basically, Sounds ran a heavy metal section to the
yeah,
people in the UK, but Sounds
hmm
were only given interviews by the
yeah,
band maybe every 6 months, and of
yeah, and
course,
usually, I
Keith
mean,
was filling that spot.
yeah, and I mean, usually as well is like, unless there was an album coming out or a tour starting or that, the
Yeah.
magazines, if we
They
got a
weren't,
couple of
yeah,
paragraphs, we
they
were lucky.
weren't interested. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
So Keith, with back in those early days when the band released the Soundhouse tapes, you were one of your roles was actually to distribute them. Um,
Yes.
could you tell? Well, could you tell us about how that process played out?
Yeah, well, initially that was probably my first sort of task with the, active task with the fan club, is because what used to happen is like I'd answer the fan mail and stuff. Rod would give me the fan mail, and I'd answer it, and like it'd give me a float for postage and stuff like that. And then when the Soundhouse tapes come out, we started to sort of sell them at gigs, but obviously they, Rod sort of said, okay, here's 5,000 copies. Can you do them by mail order? And I mean, basically, I was still working at BT, holding down a full-time job. So for one person to do it was almost impossible. So I actually ended up with my mum doing most of the mailing out.
Oh, yeah,
And
like, can I just drop in there about? I mean, I was chatting with John Duffus, whatever, who became the member 0001, and we will be
yeah,
putting a photo of that up soon. But he was actually saying that when those boxes first arrived, he was there with you, and it was you and
yeah,
he that sort of
yeah,
distributed the first
he used
batch.
to help me out. He used to help me out as well.
Yeah. He was. I mean, just sort of straying away from it a little. When I first met him down at the Carlton Horses recently, didn't recognise him for the life of me. And then he
Right.
showed me an old photo of what he looked like back in those days, and it was like,
Yeah.
oh bloody hell, yeah, of course, yeah. It's like
Yeah.
so it all fell into
Well,
place.
the thing is, if things had been slightly different, John would have been secretary of the fan club.
Oh,
Because he was sort he was sort of slight because he lived local to Steve in Leytonstone. He sort of saw Steve more. So in some respects, he was more intimately connected with Steve than I was.
Hmm.
But John, as I said, John was like a career BT man, union man, and all that. So he didn't really want to risk giving it up to sort
No,
of like
fair enough.
working in music. Whereas with me, I was so sick of working at BT. I was like, hang on a minute. And everyone sort of said, oh, you're mad and all this, because I've got some of my BT friends to come down to watch as well. And they said, oh, you're crazy. I said, look, the thing is, this was in March 1980 when I officially left BT. I said, okay, I might be back in 6 months, but at least I'd have done I'd have got something I wanted to try. If it
Hmm.
fails, okay, I fell on my arse, but at least I've got that 6 months. And if it takes off, well, blah. And then of course, obviously it took off. I didn't become, rich out of it or anything or a superstar or live in a big mansion. But hell, I had a great, I had a great laugh. I saw things, did things that, in the music business most people can only dream about. Met practically all my heroes. So which I'd never got a chance to do anywhere else.
yeah. So Keith,
No,
was
true.
was was March 1980 when it became full time for you? A full time job, a full
Uh,
time.
no, basically, I actually became officially full time in August 1980. In March 1980, I was working part time, like part time at Rod's office, like a couple of days a week, and driving a mini cab. But then in August 1980, like everything took off, and the album came down, and the touring and everything, and then it just became like, a few dozen letters a week. Suddenly become, a few hundred letters a week, and people wanting T-shirts and Soundhouse tapes and everything.
We should also mention August 1980 was when the band was on tour with Kiss in Europe, and they were playing. It was probably the first time, well, it was the first time that they were playing huge arenas, 10,000 seater arenas in Germany, Scandinavia, a couple of shows in Italy, and really that was the tour that catapulted them into, the public conscience in Europe. But they were actually, Loopy, you've mentioned they were actually bigger than Kiss back home in the UK.
They were at the time, they were at the time, and that's why Maiden took a week off in Jezero, because Kiss had gone to the UK, and they made it. Who was it they got as the support band for the UK leg?
Oh God, I can't remember, but I remember at the time. I remember at the time, like Rod saying, "Oh, we can't support Kiss in the UK."
We're bigger than they are. Yeah, so we ended up spending a week in Jezero, and the band, like Kiss, went off to the UK. And we just sat around sort of kicking bottles of wine around in the sand.
Yes, and also as well, that was another reason why Rod took me on full time, because like he was out with the band on tour, like being mother hen and dictator at the same time. So like I was back in the office keeping things, like making sure the bills got paid and stuff, and everything got caught up with at the office while he was away. So basically, I was sort of half fan club secretary and half Rod's sort of uncredited personal assistant. An experience, believe me.
Keith, were you always out on tour, every tour?
No, very rarely. The only tour I ever did anywhere near completion was a Metal for Mothers tour in February 1981. The first day when we was at the Shepton Studios doing rehearsals. I was helping with the loading with the gear, and I dropped a flight case on my foot. And fortunately, no breakages or anything. But for a few days, I was sort of like hobbling around. And after that, Rod said, "Okay, that's it. You're on the road career. Forget it. We can't take a chance of you getting hurt or anything." And then basically, I still follow him around because I was selling the Soundhouse tapes and T-shirts at the gigs. After probably about 10 days into the tour, he's like sleeping on a bus for like 2 or 3 hours a night, because it was just literally one bus with the crew, Praying Mantis, and that was
tough. That was tough.
On that bus, we broke down in Aberdeen. We broke down on the way to Aberdeen and stuff like that. But basically, after like 10 days of that, my body just shut down. And for 2 days in Yorkshire, I was just in bed. I was just in bed like non-stop for like nearly 48 hours. And I thought, no, I can't handle this. So that's when I was determined. That's when I was determined to be, I'd be office based, and also as well is, as I said, is like I didn't have any technical knowledge. So, and every time I touched something on the road, it was like I'd end up breaking something or getting hurt. So I took that as a message from the God that I wasn't cut to be a roadie.
You did. Were you at the when they went behind the Iron Curtain in Poland, Hungary, Yugoslavia in 1984? I believe you were there, weren't you?
I went to Yugoslavia.
That's
and
right.
Hungary.
Yeah,
I missed Poland.
One of our family friends was a journalist in the photo pit in Belgrade, and she recalls seeing you there, and I think you were the one who let her in, and in Paris as well. So
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
We because saw around at quite a few of the gigs and stuff, and make sure she got in and everything and that. So, but basically after like Metal for Mothers, my main road involvement, once we sold out the Soundhouse tapes and the T-shirts and Bravado took over the merchandise, it was like, we've got to get some photos for the tour program. Steve needs to approve them, because Steve, as you know, approves everything. So it'd be like, can you fly here for a couple of days and go through the tour program shots with Steve, or can you show him proofs for the merchandise and stuff for the new tour?
Wow.
And it was a case of I'd fly out there. Literally, if I'm lucky, if I'd see the show, but the rest of the time it'd be in a hotel room with Steve going through tour program shots and stuff.
So the photographs in the official World Slavery Tour program were taken in the Yugoslavia and Poland shows, were they? Wow.
Yeah, and some UK and early UK stuff as well. And so basically, it's like me and Steve would sit there with like a pile about 3 foot high of plastic sleeves of slide, and Steve would go through, pick them out, and then it'd be like, oh no, I don't like that one. Let's go through them all again.
Wow.
Oh, maybe we can find a better one than that. So literally, I mean, I can remember in Disneyland, because Steve always used to stay in Disneyland with the kids. I can remember going to Disneyland, and we literally just spent a whole day in his hotel room going through program shots. Yeah. So, like, that was my sole experience of Southern California.
Yeah. So, generally speaking, how many gigs would it have taken when a tour started off? How many gigs would it have taken for the tour program to then officially be available to the punters?
Well, most because basically we used to do two. We used to do one for the UK, and then we'd slightly adjust it for Europe, and then obviously because of the way the tour was structured, we'd start the UK, and in Japan, they'd start working on the program for the Japanese tour. So it was always like that leading. Normally, normally we'd have the program at least ready by sort of maybe. Usually up front before the first show, but maybe like a couple of days into the show, couple of tours, we didn't actually get it till maybe 2 or 3 shows in.
Were you guys taken aback? I mean, it probably sounds like a bit of a rhetorical question, but were you guys completely taken aback when you landed in Yugoslavia and Poland and Hungary and saw that sort of that intensity of sort of
worship? It came as a complete shock, because basically it's like fans from that part of the world have been writing in saying, oh, you got to play out here, and and like they'd send us like photos and stuff and videos from gigs and what have you out there, and say, oh look, this is the life. So we knew there was a bit of a following out there. We just didn't realise that like the floodgates would literally open. Once we got there.
Who actually made the final decision to go? Was that Steve or Rod?
Both of them, between them. Well, basically, John Jackson with his dartboard. Yeah. I mean, it sort of made like the first motions to the promoters and stuff, and then that basically down to Steve and Rod. Rod went over to find details, and Steve sort of like, yeah, we're going to do this.
Was there apprehension on the part of the organisation to go to those countries in '84? Because when we look at the geopolitical landscape at the time.
No, I mean, not really. It was a case of like, so far as Steve's concerned, there's fans there, we're going to play there. I mean, the only thing was like, obviously with things like, you hear about the corruption out there at the borders and stuff like that, and all that. But I mean, Dickie Bell and the production office sort of like were on top of everything beforehand, and it's like, because at that time the band were working with like PA companies, lighting companies that had done major tours all over the world. So it was a case of just basically getting everything plus. So from the band's point of view, they really didn't have much to worry about. It was all sort of like organised. They just had to be where they were supposed to be at a certain time.
And I have to ask this question. I'll be crucified if I don't. Were you at that wedding reception that they played in?
No. Unfortunately, no.
Loopy, about this?
Literally, I sort of like. Literally, it was a case of I flew in, was there for like 36 hours, and then flew home again.
Oh, okay. So you basically flew in.
That's how most of my Iron Maiden overseas touring was. It'd be like a day here, a couple of days there, or whatever.
So you flew in, arranged the particulars for the tour program, went back to London, sorted that out.
Yeah.
Look, the fan club is always, even to this day, continues to have a very sort of personal, almost like a one-on-one connection to the fans. One incident that we spoke about 2 episodes ago that I'd like to bring up with you because you're directly involved in it was in on the Somewhere on Tour in '86 where after the second Sheffield gig, Bruce had the flu. He was very, very
Yeah,
unwell or a chest infection of some
right.
sort. And
Yeah,
the following gig at Gaumont Hall was cancelled. And there was a
right.
poster created just for the ticket holders. Um,
That's right.
yeah, could you tell us the process behind that? And how many of those? Because it is one of the rarest, most sought after collectibles in amongst collectors. How many of those were actually printed?
I think altogether probably I think about between 2 and 2,500, and I think by and large most of them were taken up. But yeah, because I remember he's like Rod basically locking the band in an office and sort of saying, "You're here, you're here until these are signed." So and yeah, but I think by and large most of them were all taken up because I don't remember ever seeing like piles of them left over in the office.
Wow. So
So
they would have had them all open, sprawled on a desk, and they would have just.
yeah, literally the conveyor line. Like there'd be 100 with Steve, then they'd get passed on to Bruce, then on to Nico, then on, just down the line, like an assembly line. It
Oh
was a
wow.
very efficient operation.
Fuck. Look, absolutely love that poster.
The thing is, it doesn't change either. It's not like any of them actually got a stamp made, so they just go like done, done.
Yeah,
It literally
exactly.
is
Yeah.
signing. Yeah.
That's brilliant. Keith, let's talk about the evolution of the fan base. Now, you really are probably one of the, other than the band, of course, you're one of the only people that can speak to this properly because you were effectively one of the first fans, and
Yeah.
you have the unique privilege or experience of having actually uh, or well experienced the organisation both as a fan and as a paid employee.
Yeah.
Did your perception, I suppose, change when it became a job when you did become professionally involved as opposed to being a fan and it sort of being a spec?
Well, I mean, really, is right the way along. Like from the day I started to the day I left. By and large, I was always a fan.
Mm,
Luckily enough to get paid, but obviously as Sanctuary and the Maiden organisation got better, my responsibilities became more. Is like eventually I was merchandise manager and stuff. So like it'd be my job to get artwork to rental companies, to merchandise managers and stuff, to the licensors. Basically disseminate everything. So but from my point of view, I was just a fan who was lucky enough to be paid for doing something I enjoyed. Probably like, probably in some ways like a professional athlete or whatever. But I never ever, I never ever saw myself as part of an organisation. I was
mm.
just a fan, who's being paid for doing a job.
I mean, you make it sound the same as I used to put it across. It's like
Yeah,
right place at the right time.
that's right. Yeah, and also as well is, I mean, my philosophy basically is one of my all-time heroes, and you'll probably laugh at this. Is Frida Kelly, who started and ran the Beatles fan club.
Okay.
She was my sort of role model, and from what she said, I was actually like in the final years, I was actually a member of the Beatles fan club,
Mm.
and to me, the only person who can run a fan club is a fan, ideally with the backing of the management and the financial support of the management.
Mm.
But a fan should be the only one who could run a fan club. And on the few rare occasions where, like in America, they actually turned over the day-to-day running the fan club to corporate organisations, it just became is like all the corporations want to do was sell merchandise and stuff.
Mm.
So eventually we'd start getting letters saying, "Oh, I haven't had a magazine for 7 months or whatever," and stuff. And like both, you know, getting on to later in life. That's part of the reason why once I left Sanctuary, I didn't maintain my involvement in the fan club
Mm.
because
Right.
basically both times is the fan club turned into a disaster and it turned into like a six-figure damage limitation exercise to sort it all out. So from that point, which was I think like 88ish, is Stephen Rod, the decision was the fan club would always be run from England under their where they can keep an eye on it, make sure people aren't getting ripped off. That's why like Les took over from I did rather than a professional organisation. Although I know they use Music Glue for a lot of their operations. Les is still like in overall control of it.
I mean, did you ever find yourself sort of looking over your shoulder? I mean, going back to when I was actually touring with the band, I mean, I was the drum tech, but they'd always bring somebody in to sort of ghost somebody else. And then all of a sudden you realise when you get fired, that person was actually brought in to take over your job. It's true. It's true. Did you ever find yourself like thinking that maybe they were training somebody else to do what you do?
No, but what I did notice was like different responsibilities that I'd had was suddenly being shifted to other people. So it's sort of like I'm thinking, oh, hold on. But then again, because the way things have gone is, well, maybe they're reducing my role here because they're going to increase my role here. But it didn't really sort of materialise. So, but as I said, basically, I was unhappy there. So, and they knew, I knew I was unhappy. And Steve, you always know, so far as Steve and Rod are concerned, you've either got to give 100%, or yeah. And I mean, it's not like they said, oh, we can't work with you anymore. They said, look, we know you're unhappy. So what we'll do is there's a not so much redundancy, but there was a thing where if your position within a company is diminished, like effectively a demotion or whatever, they can offer you a redundancy.
Right.
So basically, I said, look, we know you want to be with your family and stuff, so we'll give you 6 months' pay, which is like, effectively a redundancy settlement, so you can go to America, sort everything out there or whatever. And so that was fine. And, as I said, well, if you want, I'll still be involved with the fan club, because obviously by then the internet was taking off and stuff, so global communications were a lot easier. But it was a case of, well, no, nothing against you, but we just want to keep everything in-house. We don't want to take a chance of...
Also, power to your elbow, mate. Considering that you did, as you just said, all of that prior to the internet, prior to mobile smartphones. It's an incredible job to undertake.
Yeah, and I mean, ironically, is a few years later when Sanctuary bought Bravado, I ended up working for Bravado in California. So I was involved. A few years down the line, I was involved for that.
So I was telling Kaz this the other day when we were having an online discussion, how when you was at Danbury Street and you had like the basement, like the glass windows, pretty much all the light you had coming in, apart from a couple of strip lights. And I used to come down and see it, and I was always coming out of it with arms and arms full of swag. And it literally was the old case of I live by this: is that if you don't ask, you don't get. And if I turn around and say, Keith, can I have one of them? Help yourself. And it was literally come out with suitcases full.
You know as well what I do is like if a new album came out, I always made sure the crew got up front, because otherwise, it wouldn't have happened. So
I got in touch with Keith and I said to him, do you know what? I said, all these albums that have come out on CD, and I ain't got any of them. He sent me the whole lot. In one hit, he just sent me everything.
Keith, I want to go back to what you said before. I want to go back to that time where you were sort of getting to the point of wanting to leave the fan club in the mid-90s. Do you think, you mentioned before, there was a time when the internet was taking off. Do you think the advent of the web was pivotal to, or sort of coincided with, I suppose the fan club becoming a lot more corporatized as opposed to the 80s?
No, not really. I mean, no, not really. I mean, the fan club was always like the fan club. The way it was run, obviously, is like, you had more accountability to bean counters and stuff like that, and whatever. It was a case of, well, why do you need this? Why do you need 10,000 photographs for the tour? And it's like, well, the band sign autographs on the road.
Yeah.
and that sort of thing. So it was like everything had to be justified, and it wasn't a case of sort of like common sense. It was like, well, literally, why does Nico need 10,000 drumsticks? Can't he reuse them for two shows or something? And it was like, give
Whereas
me a
what you're,
break.
Don't work like that, mate.
what you're saying, in, for example, 1985, 86, 87, those questions weren't as prevalent. Is that right?
No, it was a case of because what it was a case of the people who worked for the band then knew the bit had worked, knew the business. But once it got to sort of like the 90s, there were people coming who had never worked in the music business, so they didn't know the day to day nuts and bolts of it and stuff.
Yeah, and
So like
that was around the, you said the Blaze era, was it?
yeah, that was you're probably talking about from like 1994 to
Yeah,
1994
yeah.
onwards.
Keith, you actually have the really sort of unique experience of having been in the organisation during one of the most sort of pivotal watershed moments in the band's history, and that is the
Yeah,
departure of Paul Di'Anno and the entry
yeah.
of Bruce Dickinson, where the band
Mhm.
effectively went from, I mean, yeah, sure, they were on the ascendancy in Killers, but effectively they were
Yeah,
still very much a East London sort of vibe type band, and
right.
then they just took off into being a global monster. What was
Yeah.
that transition period like between the two singers? Was there trepidation? Was there excitement? Was it unknown?
Well, in some ways, a little bit unknown truth. I mean, no secret. I mean, as far as Paul goes, the writing was on the wall, like probably from, even before the Killer Tour started, because, towards the end, the later shows in 1980, he was having troubles with his voice and everything, and, they had to cancel gigs and everything. So it was a sort of case of like, no, how long are they going to allow this to go on? Is Paul going to be able to sort himself out or whatever? Because obviously as the band were getting bigger, they couldn't afford to like drop shows or whatever, or have a weakest link basically.
Mm.
So to most people, it was only a matter of time. And I mean, I got to admit, when I first heard Bruce was going to take it, I was surprised because I thought he had a decent gig with Sampson, and also from Paul's point of view, he was having this song, but also as I later experienced, he was unhappy with what he was doing. And once again, you cannot give 100% when you're not happy with what you're doing.
True.
So, but yeah, so I mean, it was no secret that Paul would probably want Last Past Killers.
Mm.
But as I said, it was a bit of a surprise, and Bruce took over because, as far as everyone knew, he had a good gig in Sampson. So, but at that time, we didn't know the machinations going on behind the scenes and stuff.
Mm.
So, when Rod gave me said, "Oh, here's a demo tape of our new singer," and I listened to it and I thought, "Oh, well, it's not bad actually." And he said, "It's Bruce." I went, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah." Because, I thought he might, I recognised the voice, but of course he was doing Maiden
Bruce.
stuff and not Sampson stuff. It sort of made the separation, so your brain didn't really connect the dots.
I'd
Did
forgotten
you,
all about the name Bruce. Now
Bruce?
Yeah,
that really takes me back because that's what he was known
yeah.
as in Samson.
But then,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, then once, as I said, Bruce sailed through the demos. It's probably more a formality than anything. But and then it was all like, oh my God, well, the stuff we can do with this guy, because
Yeah.
obviously
Yeah.
his vocal range
Mm.
was a lot better, and also creatively. I mean, some of the stuff he did with Sampson, admittedly, Paul Sampson pushed back against it and stuff, but the potential was there of what they could do, and it's like, with Bruce's vocals and stuff, where can the songs go?
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And I mean, in retrospect,
So I mean, it was a period of a little bit of trepidation because obviously we've got hate mail from people. Oh, Paul was in a band of finished and all that and everything and stuff. But so there was a little bit of pushback from the fans, but
yeah,
overall the outlook was right. Once we let this guy loose on stage and on the album, the sky's the limit. Which as how it turned out.
yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you. Actually, you've sort of touched on it now anyway, but that is, did you get a sense from a portion of the fan base at the time of disappointment or as you said, pushback.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people, because to a lot of people as well, is by pausing the band, it sort of kept that sort of like common man approach, sort of like the rough,
Yes.
roughly hewn
Yes.
sort of thing. And like with Bruce, it was like, you could sense it was going to be a lot more professional, a lot more polished. And also as well, I mean, quite a few people, quite a few of the older Maiden saw Bruce as a poser. Because like on stage with all the robes and stuff and everything, and
No, I've got to admit, I mean, I went to see the band on the Beast tour. I went to see them at Ipswich, and I'd met up with the band beforehand. We'd had a couple of beers in the pub next door, and then I'd been backstage, and then I can't remember what happened, but I didn't actually get to see the band go on stage.
Right.
Until they were about halfway through. Probably it might take me that long to get out of the pub, who knows. But I sort of walked in and I went, nothing much of that. And I turned around and just walked straight out again.
Yeah. Yeah.
I couldn't even tell you what song it was, but I didn't stay for very long.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because with me, I had the advantage of watching the rehearsals. So I saw Bruce in rehearsals, and admittedly with some of the stuff that was sort of associated with Paul, like Rothschild and that, I thought, I don't know, sort of. But then when you heard him tackle newer stuff, and like really heard him go at it, oh, hang on, this is a bit good. So
and I never look back. I mean, it's stunning what
I mean, once the Beast on the Road tour started, and people actually heard Bruce and stuff, it was sort of like a lot of the doubters were won over. Yeah, there was a few who were sort of like, that's it, Paul's gone, Maiden finished for me. And we did lose a few fans, but then again, once the Beast on the Road tour took off, and the band touring internationally and everything, is like, okay, we lost X amount of fans, but we made 10x amount of fans. So from a fan point of view, the fan base just exploded.
Well, also, I mean, if you look at it another way, it goes full circle. When Bruce left and Blaze came in, there were a lot of fans that went, "That's it, I'm not watching him anymore." It's bizarre. But then you've also got, as you said, that new generation of fans that came in to watch Blaze.
Yeah.
And people that hadn't even seen Maiden before that.
Yeah, because I mean, with Blaze, I mean, a lot of the fans, especially, were like, how could he put? They saw Wolfsbane and they supported Maiden. It's like, how can Blaze possibly do Bruce's stuff? Obviously, no one knew what the sort of stuff he was going to come up with, writing with Steve and Yannick and stuff for the X Factor and Virtue 11. And it was like, oh God, this is the end of Iron Maiden as we know it. But once again, I mean, he stepped in, and admittedly, he had a hell of a job to follow Bruce. But at the time, he saved Iron Maiden.
Also, he had the balls as well, because that is a hell of a pair of shoes to fill. But not only did he get the job, he was actually telling people that he'd had the job before Bruce had even left. Yeah, and I know, because I was working as a stagehand. And you hear these things. Yeah. It was weird.
Yeah. See, because also as well, I mean, another thing as well with Blaze, he was your typical Englishman. And one thing Steve was determined, no, we don't want any American posers or whatever, and we also want someone who's actually working class,
I mean, one of the other names, I can't remember the guy's name, but he was a singer in a band called Halloween, a German band.
Michael.
Yeah, he was actually touted as being one of the final three.
But
that's right.
Anybody will tell you anywhere in the world, Iron Maiden is purely, always was, is, and will be very much a British specifically an English band.
They don't even cross the borders into Wales or Scotland. It's English.
Yeah, I mean, basically they're a British institution.
That's right. That's right. And you just you could not possibly have a foreigner as part of a member of the band. It just wouldn't work.
Or you can't even have a foreigner running a fan club.
Yeah, I mean that's it. I mean, regardless of everything else, no matter how good a guy might be as a vocalist
Yeah.
or whatever, he wouldn't understand the British concept. So
No.
he wouldn't fit in
No,
basically.
No. No. No.
totally right.
No. Actually, I think up until Bruce came, everybody was from the East London area, I believe, weren't they? And then Bruce being from Nottingham originally.
Yeah,
Adrian came from North London.
yeah,
North East London because he was just down the road from Dave.
yeah.
But yeah, the rest of the band were all East Enders.
Adrian's from Hackney originally, though.
Which I mean, it comes under East London.
Oh,
But the particular
Yeah,
part he was in was almost heading towards Tottenham, which is end
yeah,
North London.
yes.
so what was it like having somebody from the sort of Yorkshire area actually playing in the band? Although even though Rod was already,
The thing is with Bruce, I mean, Bruce is like a chameleon. He can fit in with anyone, but also as well, although he's from Nottingham, and basically he went to uni in London. He
King's College, wasn't it?
he Yeah, and he hung around. He hung around in London when he was, getting into the music business. It was all London based, so he had a sort of good idea of what London life, and particularly East London life, was like. So it wasn't that much of a transition for him.
There's a thought. I just had a thought. Um, Going back to the early days of Bruce. I mean, I've
Yeah.
just read his book, What Does This Button Do? And there's a couple of references in there. Right, Keith, do you remember my ex-girlfriend, Tina?
Yes.
Right? Now, she had
Yeah.
a couple of friends called Tony and Kerry.
Right. I remember Kerry.
Yeah, well, Kerry lived in a tower block just the other side
Yeah.
of South Woodford, overlooking the motorway. And
Right.
it turns out that Bruce was actually living in the same block at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Amazing.
bizarre.
Yeah.
When I actually put the two together, it was like, I don't believe this.
Yeah.
I could have walked past them and not known.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, at that time, Bruce was dossing on floors and bunking
Yeah,
in with college pals and stuff and what have
yeah,
you. Yeah.
yeah, it's bizarre. Absolutely bizarre.
Yeah.
Keith, one other thing I really wanted to ask you is what's your perception of the evolution of the fan base? Obviously, you were one of the first ones there. You were there when there was the groundswell of sort of
Yeah.
the grassroots London support, and then it just sort of
Yeah.
when it got bigger and bigger, and then I guess my generation of fans came on in sort of 82, 83. And then when the Seventh Son album hit, you had this new wave of other
Yeah.
fans. So, how did you perceive fans changing over time with their attitudes and, I guess, sort of outlook?
I mean, for one thing, obviously, from becoming peers, they were kids.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they suddenly went from being peers to kids. He's like, sort of. So, in some ways, you had to relate to them a lot differently. You
Yeah.
couldn't sort of like, you
You got to talk
couldn't talk to
down to
someone. You couldn't talk to someone like in 1992 like you could someone in the Ruskin Arms in 1979.
No.
So because obviously they were then they were contemporaries, whereas then they were kids and stuff. And also as well, it's basically the fandom became a reflection of society.
Mm.
As society changes, like in the 80s, you had all the yuppies. The fandom changed. People wanted a lot more for their money. They wanted a lot more bang for their buck. They didn't just want to go to a gig and drink a pint of beer and buy a t-shirt.
Mm.
They wanted
you
other
wouldn't have
stuff.
Ruskin for a cocktail, would you?
Yeah, exactly. They wanted more bang for their buck. Like it wasn't a case of they just wanted one t-shirt. They wanted the sweatshirt. They wanted wristbands and everything. So the range of merchandise, and also CDs. You had the CDs, and you had 12-inch singles, 7-inch singles, cassette singles.
Picture discs, yeah, the whole bit, yeah.
Wanted everything they could get their hands on. Whereas originally people just wanted to watch a gig and have a drink.
Mm.
So, the expectations became more.
Yeah. I think one thing personally that I remember from that era was, when I first got into the band, it was I suppose the mainstream used to sort of not look down on us, but they'd sort of look at the Iron
Yeah.
Maiden shirts and sort of
Right. Yeah.
yeah. Whereas around 88, 88, 89, especially when they really hit their peak and the Seven Sun era,
Yeah.
some of those people from the mainstream all of a sudden were into the band, and when
Yeah.
the can I play
Basically,
with
yeah. I
Madness.
mean, basically, Maiden became cool.
Maiden became cool in '88, and there's some
Yeah.
of those people who would previously mock you or snigger at your shirt.
Right.
All of a
That's right.
sudden
That
we're
was
listening
cool.
to
Oh wow. Yeah.
yeah, all of a sudden we're listening to can I play with Madness or wearing the shirts, and
Yeah.
yeah, I found that a bit odd. I found it a bit
Yeah,
odd in
yeah.
retrospect.
Well, I did as well because I noticed as well. Like lots of people, you suddenly saw lots of people wearing Iron Maiden t-shirts purely because nothing to do with Iron Maiden. They like the shirt,
Yeah,
which is like what really bugs me now when you get all these memes on the internet about people, like Miley
Justin
Cyrus.
Bieber.
That,
Justin
yeah,
Bieber. Yeah.
wearing a Maiden shirt. Hell, they're wearing the bloody shirt because they like it. And secondly, is if they're in a shirt, then the band have got royalties. Someone else, like a Bieber fan, might see that shirt on stage. And, oh, that's a good T-shirt. I wonder where it comes from. They might dig into dig into the band and stuff.
mm,
So to me, they're actually doing Maiden a favour.
mm, mm.
Actually,
But obviously,
that shirt you're wearing, the Mexican shirt,
yeah,
I love the design on the back so much that I'm actually toying with getting that design tattooed
yeah,
across my back, especially like
yeah,
the hands with like the little sort of figures at the bottom. It's
yeah. Well,
just brilliant.
to me, this is probably one of the best T-shirts in the last 10 years I've seen from
Oh,
Maiden.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean that one and the LA shirt.
Yeah.
So a bit upset that it was an LAFC player, not a Galaxy player on it.
Keith,
And by the
what?
way, I toyed with the idea of getting some T-shirt paint and painting my one so that Steve was wearing an Arsenal shirt instead of West Ham shirt. And I'd love to have seen Steve's face if I ever wear a gig in the future, but no, I don't think it's sort of
send it over to me and I'll WhatsApp it to him.
So who are the West Ham supporters in the band other than the obvious Steve Harris?
Now,
Yeah,
I think it's just
that's it, basically. Yeah, I mean Davey's a Tottenham supporter. Nico's a Tottenham supporter.
yeah.
Adrian claims to be a football fan, but he did used to have a soft spot for the Arsenal during the double years back
I
in the
thought
70s.
I always thought he was a Spurs fan.
no,
Yeah,
actually,
no,
no. He's been
no,
quoted
what
as
it was, he was one of these. He was one of these people, like sort of. He was one of these people where, like, he'd go Arsenal home games, and then when they're away, he'd go Tottenham home games. So,
I
and of
thought he
course,
was a
Yeah,
Fulham
so
fan,
and
Keith.
then Yannick's a Hartlepool fan, and Bruce's I always heard that he was a Sheffield United fan, but I can't confirm that.
yeah, yeah, Sheffield United and Sheffield United and Nottingham Forest, but mainly Sheffield United.
Yeah.
I thought Adrian was a Fulham fan because he's been quoted as saying he used to live in Fulham, sort of the late '80s, and then
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's a case of like where you live is like
Yeah,
over here. It's like
wherever you lay your hat is your home.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you always, I mean, it's like me. I'm a diehard Arsenal fan, but because West Ham are my local team, I'll always have a soft spot for them. I know people are going to be pissed off about that as well.
actually, Keith, when in 1989, when Adrian did his Silver and Gold solo album,
Yeah,
was there sort of rumblings or this unspoken feeling that he was kind of leaning towards leaving the band? Because the Silver and Gold album is, I mean, it's a wonderful album. I love it, but it is it's like almost like a Bryan Adams album.
yeah.
Then
Well, see, the thing is, what people forget is okay. Well, it was an Adrian solo album, but he was writing with like old pals he'd been through. So obviously, it was going to be influenced by them as well. I mean, he wasn't writing with Bruce anymore. He wasn't writing with Steve anymore. He was writing with different people. So of course, the style would change. Same as when he went, the same as when he went on to his later solo stuff after he left Maiden.
Psycho Motel.
Yeah, depending on who he was playing with, the style changed drastically. So I mean, it's
Also,
like
this is also something I've only just learned recently that EMI actually offered the entire band the opportunity to all make a solo album.
Wow.
yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, basically, the case of once again, it came to the sort of like 100%. Is like before they started recording that, before the pre-production with No Prayer, it was sort of like a case of like Adrian and Steve, and like Steve was probably like, "Are you into this 100%?" And Adrian was sort of said, "Well, maybe 95%, you know, or whatever." But of course, it's like, and you know, I mean, it in the long run, it's worked well. But it's always a case of like, unless you're 100% into it, then you know, there's always going to be a doubt over there. You know, like, okay, you do this album. What happens if your solo album becomes a platinum album or something like that? Would you still be that interested? So, you know, once that element of doubt is in there, you know, it's a non-starter. You've got to be 100% behind it.
Keith, do you think the sound on No Prayer for the Dying and Fear of the Dark was more due to Adrian being away or more due to Yannick Gers being involved?
Well, partly ain't been involved, but also as well, it was a case of the times. Like in the 90s, it was sort of like, I mean, eventually, like you had grunge and that, but in the time, like everything was more realistic, less fantasy. Everyone was more
Yeah,
realistic. Like you had the AIDS epidemic, you had
yeah,
the Gulf War and stuff like that. So basically, it was a case of they were writing about, they were writing about contemporary events, whereas before it'd always been about sort of like
yeah. Egypt.
rock and roll and yeah. So
Music
I
and
mean,
books,
maybe
yeah.
that's part. But I want to, yeah. Also, as well, also one of the things against it was like the production values were changing as well. So
Yeah,
and you know, although everyone says Iron Maiden will always be Iron Maiden, if you look at their career, like pre 1982, post 1988, post 1989, post 2000, whatever, there is always been a small shift in our band, you know, in the band style and stuff. So although everyone says, "Oh, it's the same old Maiden," they have actually, you know, they do actually evolve, as the case may be, and depending on like who's in the band or whatever and stuff. So,
Excellent.
and of course as well, another thing is, to me, the band have always been just a group of mates I've been hanging out with. So it's like all the other stuff, like the criticism of them, and our fans look at them. I don't see them as
Yeah,
those kind of people. So to
yeah.
me, in a lot of ways, yeah, they've got a lot more money now, but it's still the same people.
They are exactly the same people. And it is a conversation again that I had with Kaz last night when I was
Yeah,
sitting there with my restless legs. And Kaz actually turned around and said that'd be an interesting topic to bring up because I said exactly the same thing. Because I was there right in the very,
yeah,
very early days, I still see them as really good mates. And therefore,
yeah,
as you just said, like any criticism of them goes over your head because you don't care
yeah,
about what people think of them.
yeah.
They're your
Well, the
mates,
thing is,
and
I
they
mean,
haven't
both,
changed.
yeah, I mean, you know, whatever anyone says, the journalists, you know, fans and stuff or whatever, is they've not been there. They've
Yeah,
not known the band on the same terms
that's
as
right.
even I have.
yeah. As you and I say regularly in our conversations, Loopy, you work with a band, you are a paid employee, and you're friends. So your worldview is going to be very different to mine, where,
Yeah,
of that teenager in, the mid '80s, with Iron Maiden posters plastered all over my wall,
mm.
you know.
Like now.
Oh yeah, what's the irony? Hey, I'm
Yeah,
a
really.
50-year-old, almost a near 50-year-old man now with.
So all I do is advertise my book.
Geez, I just
Yeah.
realised nothing's changed in
So
30.
yeah,
Well, Keith, it's been fantastic having you on the show. As I said, we wanted to have you on for quite a long time, and this did
yeah.
not
I
disappoint.
wanted to do it, but I just never, you know, for one reason or another, we just never managed to get it together. But I'm glad we finally did.
Well, we'd
Yeah,
love
so
to.
it's been a lot of
And if you
fun
want,
as
you know, if
usual.
you want me back again, just say the word.
Oh, absolutely. There's, I think,
Checks in the post, Keith.
No, I think
I've decided I'm going to throw that in at the end of every episode now.
Oh yeah.
yeah. Well, so who do we owe money to now? Mark Appleton, Keith Wilfort now. So check.
Well, Blaze will get cut out of Marks. So yeah.
No money, no money. Just send me over ketchup crisps and pineapple Jaffa cakes. That'll be happy.
Pineapple Jaffas.
Yeah.
We've only just started doing strawberry.
Yeah. Got pineapple ones now apparently as well.
Not seen that. If I find them, I'll let you know.
Yeah.
I've got nothing to offer there. No, look, you're a treasure trove of.
Hang on, Jaffa means orange. What's that all about?
Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
That's what I can never understand.
Look, it's been awesome having you, and if we would absolutely love to have you on, Keith, because as I said, you are one of the select few people who was actually there right from the start, right till pretty much, it's 20
Yeah,
years.
I don't feel so alone now.
Oh, well,
Yeah, well, that's it. It's like trading war stories. When veterans get together.
Yeah.
And in some cases, they've like being in the bloody trenches and all.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, take care. Thanks everyone for watching. Keith, thank you so much, mate. We'll see you again.
Alrighty, take care.
Cheers, mate.
See you again.
Thanks very much, mate. See you, mate.
Okay.
Thank you all.
See you.
Okay, guys, that was Keith Wilfort, an old friend of mine. Obviously, I remember him from way back when, and what a great interview. Thoroughly enjoyed that, and we have a few ideas to bring him back on the show.
Yeah,
I'm not going to elaborate too much on that, but yeah.
I love that interview. I absolutely loved every minute of that interview. It's, you're having a good one when it just flies. I mean, that sort of hour we were chatting really felt like 20 minutes to me. It just
it really went fast. That was brilliant.
So yeah, thanks to Keith. Thanks to Keith for his time, being very generous with his time and spending it with us. And yeah, we'll
he's had to go and get his wife and daughters out of the cupboard now.
Yeah, well, we're going to have Keith back. We're going to have Keith back because there are some topic areas, some subject areas that we really want to push on, and Keith's really the perfect person to do it with.
Yeah,
so
some of these ideas we have, I think the punters are going to love it.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
One thing that
sorry, I shouldn't call them punters, viewers.
Yeah, but
it's the same thing.
I suppose they're not paid. Also, they're not paying to watch us, so I suppose we should pay them to watch us. Then they'd be punters.
Yeah. My PayPal account isn't big enough for that.
No, neither is mine, trust me. And today should have been the second show of the Legacy of the Beast, the third leg of the tour. Today should have been the Adelaide concert, Sunday, May the 3rd. And as everybody knows by now, that the development over the last couple of days is the entire Australian tour has gone from postponed to cancelled, which was an interesting development. I think they were trying to come up with an alternate date, but really the prospect of large gatherings, particularly a 10, 12,000 size arena show is just not going to occur in the foreseeable future, and I think the writing was on the wall, hence why it became fully cancelled. So a lot of the Australian fans can now get their refunds. And just to the Australian New Zealand fans watching, as I know there are a few, Ticketek by now have sent the email through. There is a refund process. You need to click on a link on the email, takes you to the refund page, you nominate your bank account details, and in 20 working days you'll get your money back. So
the other thing is that according to the Maiden website, there are still sites available, still shows available and tickets available. Take all of that with a pinch of salt. Yes, again, we're speculating, but between me and Kaz, we really can't see this tour going ahead.
No. I mean, ironically, Bologna, Italy is still for sale, which
Oh, so Tel Aviv, straight after the United Arab Emirates show.
yeah, well, Dubai is cancelled, so
Yeah. So,
yeah.
you I mean, also it beggars belief that after Donington you got the show in Ireland.
No. Belsonic, the Belsonic Festival are playing funny buggers there. They're actually announcing that the artists have rescheduled, which is a bit devious, really. But we'll see what develops there. So yeah, I think my personal opinion, strictly my personal opinion, is that they'll try and hopefully get shows mid-2021 once the pandemic or an expected second wave is controlled and we have a cure or a vaccine. I think
that's the only way that I think any of this is going to happen. Which again takes us back to the original conversation we had a while ago about the band possibly playing smaller venues because you've still got that social distancing.
Yeah.
There's other people over here talking about pubs. Pubs are going to be open. Well, how do you do that if you don't have a cure for the virus? How can you have 10, 15 people in a pub that are not going to be bumping into each other trying to get to the bar?
Yeah.
It just doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, then there's the logistics of they sell out 220,000, so 2 nights at London O2, which is in total 35 to 40,000 punters. I mean,
just about 40,000 people.
Yeah, I mean, how do they then transition that to a smaller venue? How do they transition that demand to a smaller venue? I mean,
you've got builders that are carting horses at the moment. Maybe they're putting in an extension.
I mean, really, they'd have to do 10 nights at Brixton, and that's not going to happen. So the whole thing would be very interesting. I think hopefully by the time we are ready for the larger size venues, people will have the confidence to go. There'll be obviously a cure or a vaccine, and let's hope it's not in the too distant future. Although that, as we discussed last time, is a protracted process and can take up to 18 to 24 months. So no one knows. It's unknown. Lots of uncertainties.
Loopy, all I can ask is that if people have any questions, we have said this before, leave them in the comments below, down there. Down there.
Yeah, we're really interested in what
you got any questions about anything?
Down below.
Gaz is a doctor. I'm an ex-roadie of Iron Maiden. I know how the system works. You've got any questions? Ask.
Too true. Now, Loopy, let's kick this goal home. Let's put the episode home.
I just said that I know everything.
And with that, we
but the bit I do know is in my book.
Yes.
And I all I can say is I urge you to get a copy. So many Maiden fans that knew what it was like back in the early days have all said that this is the book to go to.
Agreed. Loopy, put that in front of your face. I want to see if I can interview Eddie. That's it.
Hello. I'm Eddie.
Yeah, look, that's awesome. No, look, it's a fabulous book, and really, to all the punters out there, go and get it. Sorry about
a bit of self ego there, but it's to me, it was a joy to write, and I know that people out there do enjoy it, but I don't think there's enough people out there that actually have picked up on it.
Yeah, it's a big fan base, and the relatively sort of small percentage of that have read it. But I think
there's also a lot of photos in there that people haven't seen. I'd like to make that point.
Good. I'm off to get on with the activities for the rest of the day. Take care, mate. We'll see you for the next one.
Yeah, I'll chat with you soon. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers, mate. Bye-bye.